Developing tonight, a victory for sanctuary cities and a setback for the Trump administration.
That's right. President Trump has hit another roadblock in court. KCAL 9 political reporter Dave Bryan joins us now with those details, which happened earlier today. Dave?
Yeah, and it comes at a terrible time for the administration, just when they're trying to roll up accomplishments, not be losing cases like this. This was the first legal test for President Trump's executive order cutting off some federal funding for sanctuary cities. San Francisco and Santa Clara County went to court, charging the order is unconstitutional because they said it violates the 10th Amendment, which protects the states from federal government overreaches.
This is why we have courts, to halt the overreach of a president and attorney general who either don't understand the Constitution or choose to ignore it.
Strong words Tuesday afternoon from San Francisco City Attorney Dennis Herrera.
No justice!
The ruling comes just a couple of weeks after a hearing in San Francisco federal court with demonstrators and protesters marching outside. Now, the U.S. District Judge in San Francisco issued a temporary ruling in the lawsuit filed by San Francisco and Santa Clara County. In his ruling, the judge wrote, given the nationwide scope of the order and its apparent constitutional flaws, a nationwide injunction is appropriate. The lawsuit claimed the Trump administration threatened billions of dollars in federal funding for local jurisdictions, which could have a disastrous impact on local residents.
In San Francisco alone, about $2 billion was at stake. Without it, thousands of San Francisco's most vulnerable residents would have lost access to meals and medical care. Police, fire, and ambulance services would have faced cuts.
Federal attorneys charged that's not true. They said President Trump's executive order funding cutoff would apply only to 3 federal grants from the Justice Department and Homeland Security. Grants, they argued, that require local cities and counties to provide the immigration status of those who are arrested to the federal law enforcement agencies. But even they acknowledged at a hearing this month that President Trump's executive order wasn't clear on exactly how the funding cutoff would work. In fact, during the campaign, Donald Trump was very clear about what he was going to do.
Administration will cancel all federal funding to sanctuary cities.
And we will cancel all funding for sanctuary cities.
I'm going to cut off federal funding to sanctuary cities.
And the judge made it clear he took President Trump at his word, writing, if there was doubt about the scope of the order, the president and attorney general have erased it with their public comments. The president has called it a weapon to use against jurisdictions that disagree with his preferred policies of immigration enforcement. It's another setback in the courts for President Trump's executive orders. His travel ban order has been stopped in its tracks twice already. But former Reagan White House political director Jeffrey Lord told CNN the implications of today's ruling could backfire on liberals.
This apparently means that a mayor of any city could declare, let's say they're pro-life, they could declare their city to be an abortion-free zone, an abortion-free sanctuary.
But California Attorney General Javier Becerra says the court made the right call.
Public safety is one of those items that a state has the responsibility to take care of, not the federal government. And so Trump administration can say as much as it wants, but we're beginning to see all those words of Donald Trump, the candidate, unravel as he tries to exercise power as Donald Trump, the president.
On a related issue, paying for construction of the wall at the Mexican border, President Trump acknowledged the funding, which he wanted to include in a temporary government funding bill, will have to wait a while, effectively surrendering to reality.
We're already preparing, we're doing plans, we're doing specifications, we're doing a lot of work on the wall, and the wall gets built.
In your first term. In your first term.
The wall is very, very important.
In your first term.
Well, it's certainly gonna, yeah, sure.
Well, in response to today's ruling, the Trump administration kept a stiff upper lip. Chief of Staff Reince Priebus insisted the ruling will be reversed by higher courts, up to and including the Supreme Court. The LA Times reports Priebus said of today's ruling, it's the Ninth Circuit going bananas, even though today's ruling was made by a district court, not the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So there we go.
Yeah, well, Dave, you're talking about a lot of campaign promises there. Let's talk about another campaign promise that Trump had on the trail, and that was for tax reform. So we're going to see this tomorrow. What are the chances that this will stand?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, there's certainly some doubts about it. The president's tax plan is expected to contain a massive cut in the corporate tax rate. It's the centerpiece of the president's tax plan, reducing the highest rate from 35% to as low as 15%, and some form of child care benefits, which were pushed by Mr. Trump's daughter, Ivanka. Now, Republican supporters of the plan insist that cutting taxes on the big corporations will fire up the economy to such an extent that it would reduce or even eliminate any drop in tax revenue. But the Associated Press reports tonight economists from across the political spectrum don't see it that way. Their studies indicate tax cuts don't pay for themselves by stimulating the economy enough to do that. And a new report today from the Nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation concludes a big cut in corporate taxes would increase long-term budget deficits, which you may recall Republicans have been criticizing for many years. Lena, back to you.